Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Let the filibustering begin.
Welcome to Nerd Party.
Hello and welcome to Filibuster here on the Nerd Party Network. I'm your host Lee Hutchison and I'm so excited to bring you another interview, and this one's pretty special to me. I'm joined over the podphone by stand-up comic, artist, documentarian, voiceover artist, actor, and one of the three Lone Gunmen from the X-Files, where he played the iconic Richard Ringo Langley. It's Dean Haglund. How are you, Dean?
Hey Lee, good. Thanks for having me on the show.
Oh, no. Thank you for coming on. I feel pretty surreal talking to you over the computer when I just saw you on the TV the other day talking to David Duchovny and Gillian Anderson through their phones. So you seem to have a bit of a trend for doing that this week.
Well, I think that's sort of the future of how we're all communicating, aren't we? We're all social media platform this and avatar that.
Absolutely.
I don't know, last time I actually got to the pub and sat down with some mates and just had a chinwag across the aisle.
I know the feeling all too well. So what's been the reaction to the episode? Because it came out just like a few days ago in America, and I thought it was one of the best X-Files in a wee while. Have you heard much feedback and response from people?
Yeah, I certainly have, and it's all been overwhelmingly positive. Even Mitch Pileggi, so cute on Twitter, saying great job on episode 2, Dean. Directed right at me.
He's like, it's like having your grumpy uncle give you the thumbs up. You know you've done something right.
That's right. It was all, oh, that's a good one. Way to go, kid. Yeah. So yeah, it's been really great. And, I kind of, you always hope you do your best work, and a lot of it's out of your hands, you depending on editors and director and Glenn writing it, so many elements. But this one felt really great doing, too, because Glenn Morgan had really spent a long time thinking about this episode. He put so many more elements into it that even we talked about on set, with the extra Ramones music everywhere and all that sort of thing. So it was great to watch, even though I was in it and had read the script. It was like a surprise even watching it.
So how long ago was it that you made this episode? It must have been quite a wee while now, was it?
Yeah. They flew me from Sydney, Australia, where I live, to Vancouver in August, it was. So, yeah, that's over 6 months ago. And all of my stuff for that episode was actually shot within 40 minutes. My call time was 6 a.m., and I was out of there by 6:40. And so I hadn't even... David and Gillian's call times weren't till 8, and the driver had to be somewhere else. So I just was brought to set first thing in the morning, said my lines, and then taken back to the hotel and back in bed by 7:30.
The magic of Hollywood, eh?
Yeah, it sure is.
What was your reaction when you got told oh, here's a script for the X-Files, and before you open page 1, are you thinking, oh my god, are they bringing us back from the dead? Is there some sort of underground bunker or something? What was your reaction thinking? I wonder how they're bringing me back to this one. What's going to be in this script?
Yeah, well, we had there was all sorts of speculations, of course. And in season 10, a lot of people were kind of like, oh, I hope you're not coming back for 1 second in a drug-fueled, spiritual inward journey of Mulder's or something. So there was a lot of, not trepidation, but, you didn't want it to be like the episode of Dallas where the last season was all a dream or something, and I'm in the shower with, somebody. You don't want to have that kind of cop-out. So, there was some apprehension, but absolutely. It was also Glenn Morgan who him and James Wong created the Lone Gunmen originally. So you knew he wasn't really going to screw around with his own creation, as it were.
And then so I kind of like to go back to sort of the start of your career, kind of as when you kick-started as a comedian and an actor, sort of, working your way in the industry. I'd love to know, I was curious when people, kind of go down the route of comedy and acting, what were their kind of inspirations to push them down that way, whether it's film or an actor? What were your inspirations?
Well, was a real comedy nerd. Instead of collecting rock albums, I was collecting comedy albums, believe it or not. Everything from, Groucho Marx live at Carnegie Hall to, of course, George Carlin and Steve Martin and all those albums. And then my cousin in Sweden would send me rare Swedish-only comedy albums. The comedy team of Bjarne and Flarmsling, I think they were called, and they had actually did cover jokes of George Carlin. They did Class Clown, but in Swedish, so you could play the George Carlin Class Clown and then play the Swedish version. And because you didn't understand the language, you could really pick up the timing and learn all the other elements of how to craft stand-up comedy. So I was into it on that kind of technical nerd end of it. So as soon as I was old enough to get in bars, I was doing open mics all around Vancouver in Canada, and then got into theater sports as well, improv comedy on stage.
And then what is like the kind of comedy circuit like in Vancouver? We always hear what's like in London, New York. What's the Vancouver vibe?
The Vancouver vibe's really great for improv comedy. They have one of the most successful improv comedy theaters and leagues there, with their own theater and an operating budget of $2.1 million, I think, that comes in strictly on ticket revenue. I don't think they get any arts funding whatsoever. And this allowed me, even at the height of the financial duress in its early stages, where we weren't getting paid for all the shows, but we were getting paid enough to pay rent and put my ex-wife through school and afford you the time to go on auditions. And, in Vancouver, there was a lot of those Stephen J. Canal shows, Street Justice and Wise Guys and 21 Jump Street and all those things were filming up there. So for a guy with long blonde hair, you got a lot of work as crackhead, drug dealer, a day at a time on all these crappy shows where you were just a bum and you get a line or two and help solve the whatever the crime was. So that was the comedy scene. It was really great, actually. And then if you really want to cut your teeth, you could tour the interior of British Columbia, up where the natural gas workers and the loggers worked in some of the roughest bars I've ever been to.
And how does a long blonde hair guy resonate with folk like that?
Well, surprisingly, me and another good guy, we did two-man improv on stage. So they didn't have to relate so much to I'm a city guy or just out of university with my stupid arts degree. Because we would improvise, we would bring people up on stage with us and improvise with them, regardless of how drunk they were. And in fact, we had developed a thing where each one of us could improvise alone on stage with a drunk lumberjack who was angry, while the other guy got off the stage to go get the bouncer to say, that guy who's on stage, as soon as we're finished this comedy scene, get him out of this bar because he's dangerous. But we developed this skill strength of being able to improvise single-handedly with somebody who's very antagonistic towards you and twice your size. And that removed all fear of ever being heckled or performing or anything whatsoever. Once you face that dragon, good Lord, man, everything else is just a sleigh ride. So that was my cutting the teeth, as it were.
And then with kind of like becoming like starting to get into the acting, and as you're saying, you're sort of doing bit roles. Sort of then, how does something like the X-Files come along? Because over the years, you've had Stargate and now Star Trek. They're all sort of based up in Vancouver, British Columbia. What's that sort of industry like up there for an actor to be sort of so close to Hollywood, but in Canada?
Yeah, well, you get a lot of what we call day player roles, So you have a resume that could be 3 to 4 pages long, but no one could still know you because you've always been the guy who had 1 line, 2 lines, and this and that sort of thing. X-Files was a rare phenomena because the Lone Gunmen originally were just going to be that. They were just going to be one episode, a couple of lines, a fun bit. But then it was the early days of the internet, and that resonated with the fans who were already in news groups and TV X-Files, and they saw the Gunmen as a reflection and proof that Chris Carter and all the writers were lurking in their news groups and getting lines and following along, which was true. So there was a symbiotic relationship between the fan base and the Lone Gunmen, and so they would bring the Lone Gunmen in again and again just to stir up fan chatter on the news groups. And so, yeah, we're one of probably the very first in television history to have that kind of internet strength form the television casting process.
And how familiar were you with the X-Files? So it was obviously quite early days before when you made your first appearance. Had you watched any of it? And when that sort of script came through the door, what was your sort of reaction to this role? Because obviously it's slightly different from being sort of a drug dealer and a junkie. You're sort of, this lone gunman, conspiracy theorist. It's quite a different character.
Oh, for sure. And my agent said that. He says, "Oh no, it's FBI." It was just another role, another day, another audition kind of thing. And I remember going to that audition, and it was clear that even the producers and the writers didn't know what they were looking for, because quite often actors will find that you go into the audition room and there's 8 to 10 guys who look exactly like you, same hair color, same build, and you see each other at the same auditions over and over again, particularly in Vancouver, where it's a bit of a smaller community, but at the same time, very active. So you keep going in for the same thing, and there's all the guys with long hair and stuff. But for the X-Files, suddenly there was all these other comedians. There were these huge guys in military fatigues and bald heads. They were casting a wide net for the Lone Gunmen. And they had no idea what they were looking for. I come in, I didn't wear glasses, so I just had the long blonde hair. And I thought the audition was kind of dumb because that first scene in season 1 called EBE, I'm actually on the phone for a chunk of it. So I'm just pretending I'm on the phone while the 2 casting agents are reading Byers and Frohlicke's lines and Mulder's lines amongst themselves while I'm just staring at them. So I think I'm kind of, spinning my tires and wasting my time here a little bit. But then they kept bringing me back and having me read with other people as they try to figure out how to cast the 3 of us. And they had such trouble that at one point the director said, well, the 3rd guy should be sort of short and weaselly like the first assistant director, Tom Braidwood. and they said, oh, well, Tom's had acting lessons. He's gone to university to do a drama degree. Let's just give it to him. It's just one line. And then lo and behold, as they kept bringing us back, Tom had to be both first assistant director and actor at the same time.
What was it like? Obviously, there's the 3 of you all together. How did you, in that early stages, create that chemistry between the 3 of you? Would you hang out off set, or would it all just be sort of, right, here we are back on set together again, let's just go for it? Did it just naturally click?
It naturally clicked straight off the very first day on the very first scene. I had not met Bruce. I had not read with him. I read with all these other people, including my best friend Gary Jones, who later got Walter Harriman, the guy
Stargate,
who opens
classic.
the Stargate. Yeah. Him and I read together. He didn't get Byers. I got Langley, and then so Bruce Hardwood I had never met until we got to set, and he was in the trailer next to mine. And then I go, well, who's the 3rd guy? And he goes, oh, the first AD. And I'm like, oh, this sucks already. And then we get into the set. I was like, hey, guys. And it was so easy. So, everybody was so laid back. There was no agenda. And again, first season, the show wasn't even really being watched that much. So we had no pressure of being on a hit Fox show or anything like that. You were just some new show, just another one shooting in Vancouver, as it were. And so the chemistry was right there, right from the very beginning. And we're just lucky that they were such great guys.
And with a role like this, how much input do you get? Is it one of those ones in the early stages it's sort of dictated by the writer, but then as you come back, more of yourself kind of becomes apparent in the character? Where does sort of the lines go with this sort of role?
Because we were in Vancouver and the writers were down in Los Angeles, we never met any of the writers really till like second, third season, really. I mean, you sort of meet them once at the wrap party if they choose to come to Vancouver, but a lot of them didn't because they were busy writing. And so for the first 2 or 3 years, we had like no input whatsoever, even down to the T-shirts that Langley was wearing were all written into the script that I'd be wearing Ramones T-shirts or, whatever. And so by the time, I guess, third, fourth season, now we're starting to know the writers a bit more. By that time, our characters were already kind of firmly established, and there wasn't a lot of input we could do because they sort of had it formed. Our voices match the writers' voices anyway, so it, again, flowed so easily together.
And one thing that was always one of my favourite things of the X-Files was the chemistry between the Lone Gunmen and Mulder and Scully. What was that like working with people like David Duchovny and Gillian Anderson? What did they bring to sort of those scenes as well with you?
Well, what was surprising all the time was how much we would laugh on set and then see how serious and dark the series was when you go, oh, I remember this day as being so much fun, and then you go, wow, this is really sinister, and that Mark Snow music is really tense. And it was like, oh yeah, I guess that was a tense scene. But we didn't, because of the in-between banter and all the laughs and stuff like that, it was really a lot of fun. And of course, Tom, as first AD, always was really playful, and there was really good banter between Gillian Anderson and Tom Braidwood. So that was another reason why they thought, oh, it's perfect casting. That they're already teasing each other all the time like that. So all of that just naturally played out and made for a real surprise actually when you see it on TV how different it was than what the feeling was on set.
And then one of the I suppose it's considered one of the classic X-Files episodes is Unusual Suspects. And friend of the show and huge X-Files fan Mark O'Brien, I had to tell him I was going to be talking with you, asked about this episode, and he was like, what was it like for you guys to take the lead? And then what was your thoughts when you got to find out the origins of your characters, and how much were you perhaps involved in that? And what kind of pressures came with this episode of being, this is X-Files, like its absolute peak, the movie's on the way, and you guys, it's all you, and Mulder and Scully are all but non-existent in this episode.
Yeah, we didn't really feel like that. We felt more like, the writers were under the pressure and the producers because I think David was finishing another movie, so he was delayed 2 weeks from coming to set. Gillian was in London. Also, I think there was a movie she was working on. So production had to start after the Christmas break, and yet you didn't have your two leads. What were they going to do? And so when they wrote Unusual Suspects, we felt, oh, what a privilege that we could take the pressure off all these guys that were probably just having conniptions on what to do to get it together. And of course, I had in my mind that maybe I was a roadie for the Ramones or something, whatever backstory, I had invented. But none of it was ever translated or said, could it be this or that? It was just a great thrill to see what they created. And Vince Gilligan, who did Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, pretty much wrote that episode, and then everyone else pitched in afterwards. But that was mostly him, and so it was really cool to have him sort of create the backstory and also the really fun stuff of like gambling with Dungeons and Dragons and my Kung Fu's the best. That's all Vince Gilligan line. Yeah, all of that was really fun. And of course, Tom brings his NES game system, and we all shared David Duchovny's trailer, so they don't have to rent another one. So basically, it was like a week being in a dorm with the guys that I'd never had that dorm experience before. So we all hang out between takes, playing video games and having a laugh, and sort of talking about whatever film gossip and stuff like that. And then and there was no pressure actually. Kim Manners took it really seriously. He was directing that episode, so he had the whole show in his mind and knew exactly what he wanted. When Kim Manners directed you, you had the luxury of really being assured that it was going to be cool, and you didn't have to, go, do I have to double think what this director's doing to save my performance or anything like that. You'd always be assured Kim was going to steer you right.
And then with that, there's almost like a backdoor pilot to sort of the Lone Gunmen TV series. When was the moment you realised that you were going from perhaps like recurring guest star on the X-Files to, series regular on a Fox TV series? What was sort of the process for getting you involved in that, and how long did it take to sort of come to fruition?
Well, that in itself is a story. So much so that I actually drew a comic book called Why the Lone Gunmen Was Cancelled. And I printed 1,000 of them. It's all written and drawn by me. Those have sold out at the conventions, but you can still get a PDF version on my website at deanhaglund.com.
And we'll be sure to put that in the show notes if anyone wants to seek that out.
Yeah. It has, it's a direct download. deanhaglund.com, and you can find all sorts of stuff there. But Why the Lone Gunmen was canceled is also a story of how it came together. And it was very much a surprise to us, which you would think is weird. You think they'd tell the lead actors that there's a series being planned around them. But as Frank said, they had just canceled Harsh Realm, or did they just cancel Millennium?
I think it would have been
one of the two.
Yeah, probably both at the same time, I think.
Yeah, I think that's right. Because then Glenn Morgan and James Wong, the network said, you can just go back writing the X-Files. And they were so mad, they wrote an episode that they thought would never be filmed. And that episode is the Peacock Brothers called Home. And if you don't remember Home, it's a bunch of inbred brothers who impregnate their own mother, who is limbless on a skateboard under the bed. And that's the only X-Files script that when I got, it just happened to be in my agent's office, and I read like the first 5 pages and I put it down because it was so creepy and it was so scary. And they specifically wrote it as to be so toxic as to be unfilmable. But everybody at the production office went, thank goodness Glenn and James are writing the next one. We don't have to worry or even look at it till 3 days before production had to start. And then everybody went, how are we going to film this thing? So that's the tangent. That takes us to, they knew they had an option to do another series. And as they were thinking about it, they said, remember The Unusual Suspects? Why don't we just show that and just do a spin-off of The Lone Gunmen? Because by that time, the internet, and we were already, with Apple computers, we were brought up for the launch of their operating software called OS X with the X and the X-Files. And so we were already kind of doing a lot of marketing and extracurricular stuff with the X-Files. So it was kind of an easy broach, but they never actually at any moment stopped to go, hey, would you guys be into doing a spin-off series, until it was already announced in the trades. Oh, wow. So we thought, maybe we're not involved. And the story goes on from there. It's so long and complicated, you have to get the comic book.
And then with sort of the Lone Gunmen, when I was sort of first expecting to watch Lone Gunmen, I thought it'd be like you three going on adventures, but they brought in a couple of new other characters as well. Kind of looking back on the Lone Gunmen, what's your feeling and taking away from that kind of period of time? Have you got any like regrets or moments you just think, oh, that was just such an amazing experience? And I suppose adding to it as well that it's almost impossible not to think of the Lone Gunmen, and I always associate it almost with 9/11 in itself. That for people that have never seen it, you know, the first episode is about people wanting to hijack a plane and put it into the Twin Towers.
Yeah.
The Lone Gunmen's got this sort of weird, kind of interesting history with that. What's your kind of feelings looking back all these years on that series?
Well, you know, it's funny because a lot of people who've come to me at the conventions over the years say how much they loved it, and also, you know, how relevant it is nowadays when they watch it in the last 5 years. If you watch the reruns, it has more resonance because I think the show was slightly ahead of its time. I think the writers were really delving into a lot of the issues and the conspiracies and that sort of thing, and following a tangent that we were all ensconced into. So we were already in that world. And I think that pilot episode very much had the bizarre coincidence of us stopping a plane from flying into the World Trade Center. But even more bizarre was the reason the government was doing it was to start an international war on terror. And Vince, again, wrote that episode. And he said he got the idea from a Tom Clancy novel. So that when the actual 9/11 happened 8 months later, it shook a lot of the writers in a profound way. So the reason they brought in the other characters, specifically the dumb guy Jimmy Bond, kind of the all shucks guy that we bring into the office, was there were a couple scenes where we're all supposed to be kind of nerdy egghead conspiracy theorists. We would not discuss out loud, how the self-driving car works or how this piece of technology works. So you bring a guy in then that you have to explain everything to, and then there's some comic relief and that kind of thing. So that made sense. And then having Zuleika Robinson play Eva Del Harlow was that, we needed kind of a nemesis, someone that, we work against, that would be our bad guy, and yet sometimes would work with us. So it sort of filled out the Lone Gunmen's world, as it were. Some people thought, the dumb guy was too dumb, and that they're focusing too much on the new computer hacker, and this smelt of, TV executives going, we can't have three ugly fellas leading the series. You got to have good-looking people in there. So I disagree that was the case, but every show has its casting learning curve. So.
And Mark again asked the question as well. Is like obviously one of my favourite additions to the Lone Gunmen was the expansion of Michael McKean's role from the X-Files. What was it like to work with like a comedy legend like that? Because I'm just going to assume, as a fan of improvised comedy, that you're a Spinal Tap fan. What was it like working with a genius like him?
He was so great. He's such a gracious actor and really funny. But also, we shared a common love of black and white and silent films. And he would bring in a collection of DVDs of some Lon Chaney Jr. stuff and things that we would share. And he would know a lot of the trivia on the making of these things. So there was a lot of surprising common interests that we had, too. Of course, he, great actor, and because the X-Files and the Lone Gunmen, the scripts were really dense, there wasn't a lot of room for improvisational banter, as it were, because you had only so many days to film these things, and if you were screwing around, particularly after the crews had a long, hard week, the last thing they wanted for you to do was to go around and waste valuable footage making up crap. So him and I would talk. We had a lot of mutual friends too in Second City and in the comedy world, like Rick Overton and all those guys. So we really hit it off. I know it was really great. Both him playing, kind of an evil henchman, yet light enough, and it sort of paved the way where you see his character now in Better Call Saul, how he sort of was developing that already in The Lone Gunmen.
And kind of talking about like Better Call Saul, obviously you were working with Vince Gilligan as well, who, as you mentioned, would go on to do Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. What was it like working with Vince Gilligan? He's one of the best writers on the X-Files, and obviously he was sort of the head guy on the Lone Gunmen. What was Vince Gilligan like as a producer and a writer to work with?
Oh, you would never guess something as dark as Breaking Bad and as I don't even know what the word is to call Better Call Saul, would come from such a laid back, he's got like a Virginia twang to his accent, and he's just kind of super easygoing, always smiling, lots of laughs, always thinking, really great writer. I've seen him, I don't think he directed, or did he? I can't even think if he directed a Lone Gunmen episode. I think he might have. But just unbelievable that kind of darkness can come from kind of a beacon of light that is Vince Gilligan. It's really surprising. And he's really thoughtful, too, and a wide range of interests. If you ever hear him in an interview, he's always really shockingly intelligent.
And then, sadly, the Lone Gunmen kind of was a cancelled show. But Tristan, the network's co-founder, asked, huge X-Files fan, and he still goes on about having spent hundreds of bucks on all his X-Files box sets, so there's no doubting his X-Files fandom. But one of the questions that he was asking is that, obviously, the Lone Gunmen didn't get renewed, but you still had the chance to wrap up the story of the Lone Gunmen on the X-Files. And then even in the death of the Lone Gunmen in Season 9, you got to return in the event series and now Season 11. What do you think it is that helps your character endure and resonate with fans?
Well, I think it goes back to the idea that the gunmen are the reflection of, particularly, as we said at the beginning of this, how we all live online, that we're all mediated in some capacity, that we all have social avatars, and that the gunmen were sort of this original, not just computer hackers, but people kind of living their lives and searching for the truth, focused on a thing and doing it through friendship, online, through computers, kind of something everybody could relate to, a band of misfits that had a moral compass always leading towards a true north, as it were.
And one of the questions he also asked is, like, what was the security like for your return in Season 11? And as you mentioned, this drug-hazed country western sort of moment. What was it like for? Obviously, I've heard the story that, obviously, you mentioned you're based in Australia, that the X-Files interns couldn't exactly find out where you were based, despite the fact that it's quite clear from your social media you live in Australia. What was the security like for getting involved in that? The non-disclosures and such like.
Yeah, well, okay, so I hadn't been really following X-Files news or anything. So you hear the rumor that they're doing Season 10 or whatever. And, of course, moving down here, I fired all my people except my publicist. She's still in Chicago. And then at my website, you can contact me directly through deanhaglund.com. But I go to a convention in Hartford, Connecticut with Tom and Bruce, and they said, we're going to be in an episode coming up. You should really call the production office. And I go, no, they would have called me because I'm not that hard, or at least emailed. And because no, you should really give them a call. And so sure enough, I called. They go, oh yeah, we're totally looking for you. Can you do this? I'm like, yeah. I'm shocked. Didn't anybody think to, do a Google search or anything? So once they brought us up, yeah, there was a 2-page non-disclosure agreement of no pictures on set, no this or that. And then one that even said no drawings. And if you know my Instagram, I go out daily and I draw wherever I'm sitting and stuff like that. So I had brought my sketch pad to set thinking I was going to get around and like sketch sort of the camera crew or something like that. But then I signed a thing that said I'm not drawing on set, which I don't know if it was directed at me. I don't know anyone else who was drawing on set.
I reckon that was Uncle Mitch getting one over on you for that one.
yeah, he called the lawyers at Fox saying that guy's bringing his sketch pad. I ain't showing up. So they were very strict on that, and also, I got a few emails and texts saying, "Okay, don't say anything about the show until." And, tell Tom and Bruce not to. And I go, I assure you, Tom and Bruce are nowhere on the internet. I mean, they don't have a Twitter account. And I didn't think Bruce has a Facebook. I'm not even sure. But they Bruce is an avid reader. Tom is now partially retired with a cabin in the woods that has no internet, where he spends 6 months of the year fishing in the Rocky Mountains. So you could see why the appeal of not going online and tweeting every day is limited appeal for sure. And so that was season 10. That's how really secure it was, which was the exact opposite to season 11, where we didn't sign anything. Everybody was taking pictures and tweeting from set. You saw Gillian's Twitter account. She was doing selfies all over the place. And it seemed that this time around, Fox sort of realized the value of keeping that chatter alive during the filming as a marketing tool now, and not so much trying to clamp it down and then show everybody on the day to boost ratings. It's sort of counterintuitive how marketing works now, but that's sort of been the turnaround in the last year or so.
And then kind of looking at sort of your post-X-Files career, we mentioned offline that I was lucky enough to see you do some stand-up comedy here in Edinburgh maybe about 10 years ago. And what was sort of quite significant for me as a fan at the time was, at the time, and probably still, Scotland doesn't get much of these conventions, events where you get to meet your childhood heroes or actors you saw on television as a kid. And then I remembered one day just like walking down the street, you always get these posters at the Fringe, and there you are advertising your X-Files comedy show. And I remember thinking, oh my God, I need to go see that, the chance to see a member of the cast from the X-Files. What was it like kind of in that post period of, being able to go back out on tour again, comedy work, and then obviously you've been doing documentarian work. What kind of choices did you start to kind of make in that post X-Files world about what you wanted to do?
Well, I had been doing stand-up because the Gunmen wasn't a regular. We were recurring, so we had lots of time in between episodes to go out and about. So I would kind of go out every weekend, sort of Wednesday through Sunday, and do comedy clubs across North America. And based on my ability to perform improv with drunks, and on the fact that at my very first convention, they said, oh yeah, you get 45 minutes to do a Q&A with the fans. And because I had been performing every night, I actually wasn't watching the X-Files. So I was very nervous to take questions from the fans if they realized I had never seen an episode. So I thought the best thing to do is to improvise a brand new episode of the X-Files live on stage, bringing members of the audience up, fans come up, and they can play Mulder, and we do, sort of discover a brand new episode, make it up as we went along. And this became a big hit with the convention circuit, of course, because it was so much more fun than just the regular Q&As that most of the actors were doing at the time. Nowadays, of course, everybody's singing a song or doing some theatrical event at these conventions. But the whole focus after that was to, kind of really tour and see the world in a really fun way through the ability of performing, and then not only that, because the writers say, hey, do you want to meet your real life counterparts? I met the likes of Jordan Maxwell and Dr. Roger Lear and all these people who work in paranormal phenomena and UFOs and stuff like that. So I was then invited to UFO conventions and cosmic conscious raising seminars and that kind of thing. And from that's where the documentary grew from, called The Truth Is Out There, where my co-producer and co-host on my podcast said, oh my God, we're going to take a camera crew and follow you around the world for a year and find all these interconnecting things that are happening that I couldn't even see for myself, because I was in the trees, unable to see the forest. And it took him the ability to step back to go, you are experiencing something phenomenal that needs to be shared. And so that's sort of been the continuing of how I've been living my life post X-Files.
And one thing I was really curious about when I watched the documentary, and it can be viewed here on Amazon Video here in the UK. I can't speak for the US. But as I was kind of watching it, one of the things that kind of I was curious to get your thoughts on was sort of, especially sort of in the most recent kind of episodes of the X-Files, we're looking at how conspiracies have changed in the world of Trump. How do you think things have changed since, the X-Files was very much a show of the 90s with, the Clintons, UFOs, alien autopsy videos. Now it's sort of changed in this sort of Russia, InfoWars, Pizzagate, all these different things.
Yeah.
Why do you think things have changed, and what kind of is the perception of conspiracies now? Is it something that was sort of a humorous of the 90s, and now is perhaps something that's a bit more sinister? What's your take on it from all your experiences?
We were just discussing this, and if you watch that latest episode that Glenn Morgan wrote called This, at one point, Mulder, after he sees Langley's face showing up in his cell phone, looks over at the iconic photo of the three of us, and over my left shoulder is a shadowy figure that's in the photo. And it's of this man, which is from a website called thisman.org. And it's a story of a New York psychologist who had a patient who said, I have this dream of this man who comes and he gives me advice, and she drew a picture of him. And then another patient came in and said, oh my God, this picture, he's in my dreams too. And then this guy sent out this photo around the world and saying, have you seen this man in 42 languages? And people all over the world has had this man appear in his dreams. What's remarkable about that story is if you follow that website, it actually goes to a Italian sociologist who is also a designer, a marketer, and had faked that entire story about this man. So here is a fake story with a fake website that gained traction enough so that people started believing it. And not only believing it in their dreams, seeing him in real life, actual sightings of this man seen around the world. So this idea that you perpetrate a conspiracy that then becomes what originally is the search for the truth is then the propagating of a lie, which is why that first episode said, not I want to believe, but I want to lie, because now the lie has established itself as reality, with air quotes around reality. The whole theme now, the subtext with, it seems, the first two episodes of season 11 is that the very responsibility of X-Files and the Lone Gunmen of putting these ideas into popular culture and then establishing it to the point where now the most powerful man in the world that's his only basis for information, is now the either unwinding of that or the momentum going over that to actually going to what facts are and what reality is and what is truth, and the search for truth, it subjective or a standalone a priori idea. So there has to be a feeling of some responsibility for the X-Files production of putting these ideas into popular culture and then having them gain traction in a way that no one could have ever anticipated, and then at the same time finding a way forward from that, and what brings relevancy to the X-Files today in this world.
One thing I'm curious to ask you is that obviously, like there's you've done some videos with Alex Jones, and sort of he's one of the big kind of conspiracy characters of the day, and sort of he was heavily implied the character in season 10 was very much based on that mold. When you watched sort of season 10 of the X-Files, and the character's name doesn't come to mind at the moment, what is Alex Jones like as an individual to sit across from? I find he's such a larger than life character, regardless of what people think of him. Is it a challenge to be across from him, or does it bring out sort of that improvisation that you don't know what this person across from you is going to say, and how do you sort of roll with that? What's that kind of dynamic like in a one-on-one situation?
Well, it's interesting because the first time I met Alex Jones, his radio show was out of the just a little tiny front room of his house. He had 2 little handy cams and 1 little laptop, and that was his show. And there wasn't, and he talked to, he was just doing an interview show, and there wasn't much in the way of the angry, yelly guy. And that character sort of developed over the years. That every time I see him, he'd be a little more entrenched in a characterization that would, help propel ratings and keep the sponsors and growing his empire, which he's a millionaire many times over now. So very much, as he said in the divorce proceedings, it's a character. It's definitely a character. That is not who I know, who I've had dinner with, and who I met that first time. He's developed that specifically in reflection to, a growing fan base and what they want to hear and what gets ratings and stuff like that. As anybody who becomes famous develops a persona. At the same time, I am dismayed at the character that he developed. I can't hold it against him, but it sort of seems to go a bit, how do we say, obtuse from the angle that I assumed he was getting into when he first started it. This idea of what is presented, what is the truth behind that presentation, and sort of having that truth be told, as opposed to perpetrating whatever the fan base wants to hear, kind of thing. So yeah, it's I'm saddened, I think is the ultimate term, because the last time I talked to him, it seemed to be really hard on him. It seemed to be very, very wearing, all that energy he has to put out, all that rage that he has to muster that may or may not be genuine, may be character-based, but at the same time, it seemed way more effort than it was worth, frankly.
And finally, like, what are you up to just now in Australia? I know you're working on a few different projects, and you mentioned there you've got your own podcast. What are you up to on the other side of the world, apart from getting a nice tan a million miles away from the Vancouver rain, I imagine?
Yeah, well, it's actually cloudy this morning. I'm working on a few projects. Not at liberty to say, nothing signed yet. And of course, my art career has taken off. So my paintings now, I'm being commissioned. I'm behind. I was supposed to get one commission done before Christmas. And I'm doing a lot of pet portraits now because of my love for animals. So people are getting me to paint their pets in most beloved ways at reasonable prices, I should point out. And let's see, what else? There is, yes, the podcast. I could talk about that, and I could talk about the other two things I can't talk about, but they're going to be cool, and they'll be available for viewing on your screen.
Excellent.
Oh, you know what? I can't talk. Oh, I've been winning awards. No, this web series I'm involved in has been winning global awards. It's called Shakespeare Republic.
Oh yeah, I've heard of this.
Yeah, this was a real surprise to me. They approached me when I was at the Melbourne Comedy Festival, knowing about my acting background. And I guess I misheard them. I understood it was going to be a live, sort of multi-level performance of Shakespearean monologues that would be recontextualized into a new narrative. What in fact it was a beautifully shot web series of Shakespearean monologues recontextualized into a new narrative. And this thing I'm blown away by the acting talent that she corralled into this. And now it's winning awards at web series festivals around the world. And there's another season coming, and I'm so proud to be a part of this. Shakespeare Republic .com.au, I think.
Yeah, we'll also put that into the show notes as well. It would be great for people to see this, as you say, award-winning show.
Yeah, it's been really phenomenal. I'm shocked, actually, but I'm very proud to be part of it.
And unlike your former colleagues in the Lone Gunmen, you do not live in a cabin in the woods, and you're quite prevalent on social media. So if people were listening to this, wanted to reach out to you, find out what you're doing in these secret projects, I'm hoping it's maybe another X-Files episode. If they wanted to reach out to you, follow what's going on, where can they find you online? And as I say, your podcast as well, where can they find that?
Well, let's see. We can start with Facebook. You can go to my Dean Haglund page, and I'm already at 5,000 friends. So, and then Facebook's just advertising at me nowadays anyway. So I'm not so active on that one. But you can follow me at Twitter at D Haglund, so that you're not wasting all your characters writing my full name, just D Haglund. And on Instagram, I'm Dean Haglund, where I try to put up, kind of do a painting a day. And of course, I don't upload a painting a day. So I'm backlogged in how many paintings are on my hard drive versus how many I'm uploading. Mm-hmm. And then you can follow me there. And then the podcast is a free weekly podcast we've been doing for 10 years. Every Monday, a new hour-long show goes up with me and my co-producer, Phil Lareness. And you can find that at chillpackhollywood.com, spelled CHILLPAK, Hollywood.com. And and then that one we always go over what we're watching, what we're reading, what's going on, celebrity deaths, school closures, the whole thing.
Perfect. Thank you so much for coming on today, Dean. I really appreciate it. And it's so personal to me as well. As I say, I grew up with the X-Files, and to be chatting with you today is, a bit of a dream come true. I couldn't imagine it as a child. I would be chatting across from you today. So thank you so much, and thanks for giving us all these great stories and sharing your experiences with us. It means the world to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee, and I look forward to coming back to Edinburgh. I miss it so much.
Exactly. We'll grab a swig of beer when you're here next time.
I cannot wait. Thanks so much, Lee.
Cheers. Thank you. And the truth is out there, everyone, so make sure to follow us on thenerdparty.com, where you'll find all our wonderful podcasts. Thanks for listening.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.
Welcome to Nerd Party.